So hello everyone and welcome to this kind of an extra edition of the Big Brother 7 reunion. But a lot of you, we listen to what you say, and so many people wanted to hear from you, Sam, because we didn't really get a chance to talk because there's so many people on the call. So I
Mhm.
mean, we covered a little bit about Big Brother, but one thing I didn't cover, obviously, when you went in the house, that
Uh-huh.
we all knew you as Samantha, because
Correct.
you're born a male, transitioned into a female, and we saw you on the show. But now, changed again. You look incredible. So I just want to kind of talk about when did you decide to transition back?
Okay, well, I mean, like for a lot of people that obviously didn't follow my story after Big Brother, I think it's a bit of a shell shock for a lot of people that do meet me, and when they have to recap, who are you again? And when they look back on my Big Brother time and then they Google me, they're just like, wait, hold on a sec, is this the same person?
Yeah.
And I've encountered that quite a lot, actually. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people, when I was on Big Brother, they didn't actually know the background as to why I was Samantha on the show. And it's only now that, obviously being a full-grown adult, that I'm able to review back and kind of recap on all the different stages, what I was going through back then, that I can really fully appreciate who I am to this day, and appreciate the time of being Samantha as well. And I know that back then, 2006, it was still a little faux pas. I think people didn't really have an understanding so much, about the transgender issues. They didn't really understand what a cross-dresser was. They didn't understand, what that was all about. So I think, in a positive light, I think it was good that at that time, even though I did get a bit of negativity, that I feel like I put a little stamp in my history timeline to be able to open the doors for other people like myself, to have a better awareness of teenagers that were going through sexual identity crisis. After the Big Brother stint, I did receive a lot of really beautiful letters from, different individuals, and I recount getting a letter from a girl in Southampton that actually thanked me for going on to Big Brother, because ever since I went on to the show, her brother, who had been tormented at school and bullied really badly, that was obviously going through his transition of, male to female, people started to, instead of making fun of him, they were actually referring to him as like, "Oh, you're like that person on Big Brother," and if at all I was able to kind of highlight or be able to, you know, give a better awareness to people in the UK at that time of people with, um, you know, with going through what I was going through, I felt like that was an achievement. Now, referring back to your question, after Big Brother 2006, in 2007, amidst everything that was happening, because like with Big Brother, your 5 minutes of fame is up very fast. And I never really had any intentions of working in the film TV industry. I didn't really have any aspirations to, even go down the route where I've gone. And I think everything just happened the way that it was supposed to. When I moved back to Scotland after the Big Brother stint, I didn't get a very good reception, because where I lived was a very small town, and the reception that I received was, um, at best, very negative. Because when you come from a very small town, a bit like Glyn, myself and Jenny, we came from very small. We came from um, very small hometown mentality. So people
Yeah.
didn't really have very open minds, and I, I actually shut down after Big Brother. I think for a good period of 2 months or so, I couldn't even leave my house. I I did suffer from depression, and it's something that I like to talk about as well. I suffered from extreme depression, to the point where I couldn't even open the blinds because I was so scared of what other people thought of me. People that lived in my hometown had thrown eggs at my house, you know, like really shady things that when I look back now, I laugh at it. But at the time, it was not a very nice feeling because I felt very vulnerable. I didn't have like a mom and a dad that you know, were looking after me. I didn't really have like I didn't have any parental guidance.
Yeah.
And at the time as well, I didn't have a management. I didn't have a manager. You know, there was just a lot of things that I felt that I didn't have to help me with the transition after Big Brother. And I presume things have changed a lot actually since, I presume things have changed a lot since obviously my time on Big Brother. Now, in regards to how I became Samantha, which a lot of people don't know, was at a kid. So I went to, I was born in Indonesia. My father is Scottish and my mother was Indonesian. And I moved to the UK when I was 7 years old. So the transition from living in Asia, then moving over to the UK was a very tough one for me. And basically what happened was that I was bullied very badly at school. I had a bit of a time trying to kind of transition into like another culture, another country. And growing up, I never really understood the definition of gay, straight, lesbian, transgender. It was never anything like that. And at the age of like 10, 11, I was actually taken away from my parents and I was put into a foster care system just because of the amount of bullying that was happening at my school, to the point where I was, you know, like super depressed as a kid growing up. And also, you know, people used to make fun of me for being gay, but I didn't understand what gay was because it wasn't something in my mind. I hadn't even, you know, I hadn't really processed who I was as a kid. And one day I remembered seeing, you know, my social worker. Her name was Sandra Thompson, and I actually talk a lot about her in my autobiography. She used to wear makeup, and she was always such a happy-go-lucky person. She had very positive aura about her, and I was going through so many problems emotionally, also just trying to figure out who I was, you know, the fact that I was abandoned by my own parents, which was a very tough thing for me. And I thought, oh, look, she wears a lot of makeup, and I kind of weirdly connected makeup with being happy. So if I saw someone that, you know, had makeup, they always looked happy. So in my mind as a kid, I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe if I start putting makeup on my face, then I'm going to be happier. Because everyone that wears makeup looks happy, they look glamorous. And in my mind, there was never a thing about, you know, it wasn't like I woke up one day and thought, hey, I want to be a girl. So I actually stole the foundation from my social worker. And obviously, Sandra being Caucasian, very white, and at the time I was like a little tan kid, I stole her foundation. And I remember sneaking into the bathroom on my lunch break at school. And
We've lost you there.
so I smothered my face with this white foundation. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Perfect.
Okay. I smothered my face in this white foundation. And of course, I didn't know how to do makeup. So there was like this very prominent line. So I looked like Casper. So my nickname at high school was Casper. Everyone used to, you know, say, oh, hey, there's gay Casper. You know, like I got everything under the sun. And for some reason, the minute I started wearing makeup, even though I still got a very negative reaction from, you know, the kids that were bullying me at school, for some reason I felt confident because I thought, you know, this is like my mask to the world. Nobody's going to get me. And okay. And in all honesty, that built up my own confidence. And obviously the the more comments and the more critique that I got from people about like how I was doing my makeup, I was like, oh, okay, I got to blend. The next thing I was like, okay, maybe I need blusher, and maybe I need this, and you know, I started exploring with other makeup. And it was only maybe a year or 2 years into wearing makeup, I remembered seeing the reflection of myself in a mirror, thinking, holy crap, I look like a girl. And it wasn't, you know, it wasn't anything about me waking up one day and thinking, oh, I want to be a girl, but it just became like this transition that I grew into. And of course, I was very confused because, you know, suddenly people were calling me, hey, miss, or hey, ma'am, or, you know, I was being identified as a girl. And at first it was a bit embarrassing, but then I kind of just embraced it. And the more that I continued to explore that, the more comfortable I became. And, you know, I remember going for my first job interview, and they were like, how do you want to be referred to? And they're like, yeah, just call me Samantha or Sam, because it's a unisex name. And they're like, so are you a girl or a boy? And I'm like, well, I'm unisex. And they just looked at me and they were like, okay, we don't understand that term. And I said, well, the way that I like to present myself on the outside, yes, can be construed as being a female. On the inside, of course, I'm a male, and I am more feminine. I don't really class myself as gay. I don't, you know, I'm not a lesbian. So I'm happy to just be called unisex. And you know, it was a bit like being the third sex. And of course, this is going back 2004, 2005, 2006, and people hadn't really got their heads around it. You know, they understood, you know, feminine men, but and people like Nadia that came out in Big Brother was a great feat as well, because it was able to give more awareness for people that were, you know, wanting to transition or change their gender. So I don't know, I was kind of like, you know, people called me, oh, you're a half, you're a half Nadia, half man, or whatever, you know, like people came up with different terminologies for me, and I was totally happy with that. I was like, okay, if that's what makes you feel comfortable to label me or put me in a stereotypical box, and you're comfortable with labeling me that, great. And you know, after Big Brother, when I looked at all the different newspaper articles and things that people had written, you know, they were like tranny this, or cross-dresser, you know, pre-operative transsexual, you know, there was just so many different terminologies into who I am. And in actual fact, I was like, hey, why can't I just be Sam? I don't have to be labeled under anything, you know, like just Sam from Big Brother, full stop. But no, you know, people always have to add that little label. And I was the tartan tranny, or the Scottish tartan tranny, or it was just incredible, absolutely incredible. Yeah, so there you go.
Well, I did want to ask you, I mean, you touched upon it, you know, your parents. So do you have any relationship with them now? So since they,
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so
Oh.
actually, very interestingly enough, so it was a very long story. So I mean, I'm happy to talk about it because it's already out there. It's out there in my book as well, and also in the movie. As a kid growing up, I was very badly sexually abused, and that's something that I never really discussed when I was on Big Brother. I never discussed after Big Brother, you know, like in any interviews and things like that. So the reason why, you know, like I felt very lonely after Big Brother is because I really didn't have parents. Both my mom and dad, growing up, you know, my recollection, my fond memories was living in Indonesia. My father worked as a missionary overseas, and he was a trained nurse and doctor, specializing in leprosy. And my dad basically, long story short, got really sick in Indonesia after 28 years of working there, and he decided to relocate us all back to the UK. And at the time, I was 7 years old. Now, with all the sexual abuse that was happening, the bullying, all the rest of it, that's how social services basically came in and took me away from my parents. And essentially my parents had signed me off to the government. And that was why I was then put into foster care homes. I moved basically from one foster care home to another, to then social security housing, all of this kind of stuff. And I only I was in touch with my mom and dad when I was 23 years old. And that was through an email and a letter, because for so many years I could not understand for the life of me how my parents just dropped me off and they never came to pick me up. And every day I would ask my social worker, I'd be like, oh, is my mom and dad picking me up today? And they'd be like, oh, maybe tomorrow. So, you know, like a few days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and then, you know, ironically, years later, I tried to, you know, locate them or have some kind of relationship with them. So at the age of 23, I'd already, you know, accomplished a lot of different things in my life. And at the time I was already married. I already had my first kid. And I actually paid for my mother to fly, because at the time I was living in Indonesia. I flew my mother in from the UK to Indonesia to basically be introduced to her grandchild. And the only reason I made contact was because I felt that a part of me had started to change inside. That I believe that if you want to move in life, if you want to move on and really, you know, really get somewhere in life, you have to learn to let go and forgive. Because if you don't forgive, that hatred becomes anger, and it's a negative inside you, and it's much better to release that anger. So I forgave my parents, much harder with my father than it was with my mom, and, you know, like started to have some kind of relationship with them. And fast tracking years later, you know, I'm so grateful that I had the time that I had with my parents. My father passed away in January this year. And fortunately, I couldn't because of the pandemic for, you know, a funeral. And currently, right now, my mother is extremely sick, and she has, you know, a lot of different health issues. And that's the reason why I've decided that I want to move back to the UK to be able to look after her, just because, you know, she had cancer and a whole various different other multitude of health concerns. So even though I haven't had the best relationship with them, you know, growing up, I've tried to kind of put that olive branch out there and have that relationship with them, because I really believe that the way that you treat your parents is the way that you are going to be treated by your children one day.
I mean, listening to you talk about your life so far and some of the things that you've gone through, it seems that, especially when you were younger, you always were made to feel isolated for who you are as a person. So when you put yourself in the Big Brother house, you know, you're isolated from everything. Was that difficult for you? Because, or is it all that you've ever known? Did it feel kind of normal in the sense that you've always felt isolated?
Um, you know, I think growing up, I always felt very lonely anyway. I was always the odd one out, you know, like at school, high school, anything that I ever did, I always felt like the sore thumb that stuck out. It didn't matter whether I was pre-Samantha or Samuel, I always felt like this loser, you know. My parents didn't even want me, you know, I couldn't even find a friend at school, and that was the truth. I literally had one friend, her name was Carrie, ironically, and I haven't seen her in years, but I don't know, like that feeling of isolation, I think a lot of it was just insecurity, because deep down inside, all I wanted was to be able to have a friend, have someone that understood me and didn't judge me. And of course, the whole thing with Big Brother, how that happened was completely accidental, because I actually did not apply for Big Brother. This is something that a lot of people don't know. I didn't actually make a formal application to go on to Big Brother. I was literally at a Boots one day, and a lady had tapped on my shoulder, asked me some questions about myself. She's like, oh, you look like a really interesting person. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, lady, I'm buying Tic Tacs right now. It's like, you know, like back then I didn't even, I just bought my first cell phone, you know, with my salary. And I was like 17, 18 at the time. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, this is super weird. Like, is this lady hitting on me? I didn't know who she was from afar. So, and I just remember being given this calling card from her, and at the back it said Endemol. And of course, I was like kind of like at night school at college, and also working like 2 different jobs to basically support myself. And you know, like to be randomly tapped on the shoulder in a thing, like, you know, you just forget these things. And I was like, okay, thanks. And the card, I must have put it in my pocket, and I didn't even think about it. Within 2 weeks' time, someone messaged me on my MySpace.
Wow, I
And
remember
I do
MySpace.
not even, yeah, they were like stalkers, man. Like Big Brother was like mega stalkers, because I did not apply for Big Brother. It wasn't something, I didn't go there to queue up and apply for this thing. And so someone had messaged me in MySpace, and it was the same girl again. She's like, "Wow, you're a really hard person to find." She said, "You know, but luckily yeah, you're a bit different." She's like, "It's me again. I think we bumped into each other at a grocery store." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that one." And I'm thinking to myself, "Okay, this is creepy. This is like on another level." I mean, the fact that the business card was already given to me with a mobile number and I didn't contact should have been a sign that I was not interested, you know. And it's funny because I actually just talked recently to the person, how this all started. So that was really funny. I can't name names for it
Yeah, of
for
course. Uh,
confidentiality. Um,
Going back to
and yeah, mhm,
sorry, I was gonna say, going back to Big Brother, was there any
yeah,
time that any housemates made you feel uncomfortable, or did you feel you were being judged by any of them? Because there were a lot of
yes,
friendships in there. So, who
yeah.
made you feel like that, and what was it about them?
Okay. If I'm in all honesty, like this is like a disclaimer. Like I try not to have anything against anyone. You know,
Yeah,
like I know that it was a very long time ago, but I have to discuss it based on how I felt at the time, and of
of
course
course.
what had happened in the house. Um, I was actually I was I got quite depressed in actual fact because of
Wow.
Nikki. Because Nikki really made me feel less than human. There was a lot of comments that that she said to me on the show that was never aired, because after rewatching it I was like, wow, Channel 4 really were protecting her, because there was a lot of things that she said that was never ever aired. There was occasions where she had said, like, I think they aired some things like Man Beast, who is this, and she'd ask me about, like, like, so have you got a willy? Have you got a dick? Like, I mean, a lot of questions which I'm sure a lot of people had anyway, but there was just a lot of inappropriate innuendo that she put in the house, to me. And she's like, oh, so, and I remember very clearly, she said to me, she's like, oh, you don't really have a place in this world, do you? Because I mean, like, you're really strange, you're weird, and I don't know, there was just a lot of things that I know that if that was aired on TV now,
Yeah,
it
of
would have
course.
been a big uproar, because in a way I think that it was in some form of bullying on her part, because for her to make me feel down made her feel better.
Yeah,
um, and Glenn did say to me on many occasions, he said that, like, if I had just stayed on, that week, because Nikki was very popular. So for me and Nikki to have such close marks, because I think it was 53%. So we were actually kind of tie and tie, 50.3%. I'll have to double check what that voting thing was. So I didn't feel completely hated, because there was obviously people out there that liked me.
yeah,
I just think that it's always a much harder transition if you come in later in the show as opposed to coming in from the start. And that, as a result, I was on the guinea pig round with some very famous people to this day. Um, and I went into the guinea pig round, and funnily enough, I actually won my guinea pig round. How crazy is that?
Well, do you know, the thing is, I didn't know this until I spoke to you when we were putting the reunion
So
together.
I actually,
Sorry, you can you hear
yeah,
us?
yeah, I can
Oh
hear you
yeah,
perfectly.
I know. So I was going to say, I didn't realise until I spoke to you when we were organising the reunion how much you've
Uh-huh.
been doing since Big Brother. And that's the crazy thing, because I was looking at it and you were talking to me, and I looked it up and I was like, wow, because none of us know, because it's obviously it's not in this country, but the stuff you've
Right.
been doing must just, I mean, it's like a whirlwind kind of world. So tell us a little bit about that, because people will be, shocked to hear just some of the amazing things you're doing.
I know. Actually, I should show you something after. I just got my magazine cover as well. I'm front cover of yet another magazine. I don't know how
I
many I've
love
done now.
that.
They sent me a plaque. Actually, I'll show you that in a few seconds. No, not a few seconds, in a few minutes. But yeah. So okay, recap. So 2007, moved to Indonesia. And after Big Brother, I actually did I did go in for some help, you know, not psychiatric help as such, but it was just emotional well-being help. Like
Yeah.
I went to go and see like a special life coach after Big Brother, basically just to kind of rebuild my confidence and just reassure myself that, I am special and I am a good person, and it doesn't matter what other people have to say. At the end of the day, as long as I'm happy, that was the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I got myself into a very good place. And prior to deciding to move back to Indonesia, I actually took a vacation to Jamaica with a couple of my friends, and that was the first vacation I had after Big Brother, and I was so grateful to have that opportunity. So I basically packed up and left. Sold my little Fiat Seicento, which I absolutely adored, um, and I sold pretty much anything that I had in the UK, and I just got a one-way ticket to Indonesia. And of course, the reason for me moving to Indonesia was because I wanted to basically go back to my roots. I wanted to, my recollection of my happiest memories in my life was not in the UK, but it was growing up in Indonesia. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to leave everything here and go to Indo. And when I went to Indonesia, of course, once I landed there, I was kind of confused, thinking, okay, um, my Indonesian is not that great because I don't speak it very much anymore. I could basically, I had the basis of what they were saying, but I couldn't reply back. So number one, I was like, okay, I have to educate myself in the language. Number two, get a job. What the hell? What am I going to do in Indo? I literally just landed, like I'm Samantha. It could be frowned upon over there because in Indonesia, they're predominantly Muslim country. So the acceptance of gay people and, transgender LGBTQ community is like nil and void. It's like, it's a no-go there. And at the time, I was so naive, unaware of what I was doing or what I was stepping into. So I tried to apply for jobs. And my first job actually was working at a relocations company, where they hired me as Samantha. And of course, in Indonesia, there's a law that when you apply for a job, um, you get a 3-month, it's like a 3-month trial to see whether you're good
Yeah.
at the job or not. And after 3 months, they give you a full-time contract, and they cannot go back on that. So for 3 months, I withheld my identity because on my passport, it was quite clearly I was a male, Mr. Samuel David Alexander Brodie, not Samantha.
Yeah.
And I kind of like got into the job on the basis of being Samantha. But I did such a great job at what I did that after the 3-month period, I already signed on the contract. And that was when I remember getting a phone call from my manager at the time. Her name was Marie, and she was from New Zealand. And she called me. She's like, tomorrow morning, just before we go to the office, can I have a word with you? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problems. And she's like, okay, I need you to be really truthful with me right now. She's like, I hired you on the basis that, like your English is amazing for an Indonesian and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, your point being? And she's like, on your ID, it says that you're a male. Like, I'm just kind of like confused. Like, you're not a girl? And then I was like, oh my God, really? Are you shitting me? And she said, because the director of the company just called me and I'm going to get my ass whooped for hiring someone like you. And then I looked at her and I was like, what do you mean someone like me? And she's like, well, we don't really want to hire, like transsexuals or people like that, and I'm like, okay. And I said, well, haven't I done my job well? And she's like, yeah, amazing. Like, the clients love you and blah, blah, blah. She's like, oh, I just don't know. We'll have to go and see Jason when we go into the office. And of course, when I went there and then we pled our case, they had already signed on the dotted line. So by Indonesian law, they could not fire me. But I ended up opening the eyes of a lot of people there at that time about, who I was as a person. They even had a toilet just for me. They took the disabled sign off and the toilet was Sam's toilet.
Wow.
And I'm not kidding you. Like, and I had such an amazing experience working there. I mean, like the pay was shit, but I made a lot of really great friends. And one of my ex-colleagues, actually, she lives she moved from Indonesia. She lives in Scotland now. And I just recently caught up with her. We were just talking about all the crazy things that happened. So how I got into film and television was because I was working at that company, and there was one of the girls from the finance department. You know, like, I think a lot of people were super curious and like, who is this person? You know, like, how on earth did you get a job? I was put on a very level for my at this company, and I know that there was a lot of jealousy surrounding, you know, like my position and how I got the job, etc. And this finance girl had a brother that was working for a television company called Trans TV. Ironically, Trans TV. It's like, oh my God, you know, transsexual TV. No, no, it's not. It's just called Trans TV. And she didn't really know who I was, but back then people didn't really Google. You know, people didn't really use Google. People didn't really research too much on individuals. And for some reason, she found out that I was this person from Big Brother in the UK. So she kept sending me personal emails asking me, like, are you, do you recognize this person? Is this you? Like, are you this person? Did you go on Big Brother? And, you know, like, I was like, oh my God, I want to run away from the whole Big Brother thing. I do not want anyone to know who I am. I just want a fresh start. I'm not working in film TV. I'm so traumatized by that whole ordeal. And she then passed that information to her brother, who was a television reporter. And it started like, I used to come into the office, and then it was like this person was waiting at reception. And then I'd just be, I told my secretary, I was like, just tell, if anyone asks for me, like, I don't exist. I don't know who they're looking for. They've got the wrong person. So one person led to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And then after a week, it got so much that HR actually got so many complaints from other staff saying, you know, like, all these reporters are parking in my parking slot. You know, like, what's this all about? You know, please deal with this. And the reporters basically told HR, they were like, okay, we're not going to leave you alone until we at least get a statement, or we get some kind of interview or verbal promise that we can interview Miss Sam. And of course, after HR told me that, you know, and I didn't want to get into trouble, and at this time I'd already worked for the company for like a year and a half, and that was like my bread, that was my bread earner.
Yeah.
They, I agreed with HR. I said, okay, fine, I'll do an interview with them. I don't know what the hell that they want me to do. So they they made it. My first television interview was on a TV show called Insert, INSERT, and that's a live daily morning show, and that's aired to something like, I don't know, 200 million people.
Wow.
So, you know, so talking about, you know, like making, you know, talking about trying to be private and all, and then suddenly being thrusted onto this morning daytime show. It's kind of like the Good Morning Television thing.
Yeah.
They did, you know, I didn't have a manager, I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a single clue what questions that they were going to ask. And, you know, I kind of just did it because I wanted to get it out the way and then let everything subside, and I can go back to just living a normal life. So that one interview then led me to meet with the big boss from that television station, because the ratings were so high. And of course, television, it's all about ratings. So if your ratings are good, and the fact that my interview slot was so good that they repeated it 3 days in a row, even at the same time when football was playing, and the fact that my ratings was higher than the football, they were just like, who is this person? We need to sign this person on. And the rest was history. I signed a 2-year contract deal with Trans Television, was then allotted like a talent manager, and then from Trans TV, I started doing other television stations as well with the permission of my contract. I did RCTI, TV1, MNC Group, which is one of the largest television network groups in all of Southeast Asia, actually. And just one thing led to another. I had my own talk show,
Wow.
Sam's House, which I have looked on YouTube to try to find, but I mean, a lot of these things are, Indonesia, we're kind of like behind a little bit. So we weren't really in the YouTube era, you know, 2007 to 2010, you know, it was still, YouTube was, you know, 2012 onwards for Indo. So I had my own talk show, Sam's House, and it was like a daily show. I had no formal training of how to do presenting. I didn't know how to ask people questions. I didn't even know what the fuck a teleprompter was. Oh, I'm not allowed to swear. Sorry, Davina.
You can
Yeah.
swear as much as you want.
Okay. And I didn't know what a teleprompter was. You know, like I literally learned as I went.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I remembered my first day when I did Sam's House. I was so used to just talking to one camera. They were like, no, 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 you have to make eye contact to all 5 cameras. And I'm like, how do I do that? They're like, just look for the red light. So when the red light is on camera 1, look in that direction. And then I was kind of like, okay, how am I doing this, you know? And eventually I built my character. I built my confidence. I was still Samantha at the time. And long story short, at that point in my career, I already set up an orphanage. So to this date, I have my own orphanage. I have 136 beautiful children.
Wow.
So basically, 30% of all my income from film and television commercials goes directly to my orphanage, and that's something I'm very, very super proud of, and that's probably one of my greatest achievements apart from my children. And at the time, I just started my orphanage, so basically all the income that I was making from film and TV went directly at that time to my orphanage, where ironically I was also living on the compound as well. And you know, so TV at that time was like a really big thing for me, because without it, I was gonna die. I didn't have any money, you know, like that was my sole income. And being that our country is very Muslim, they had a lot of different, they didn't really agree with the fact that there was, you know, it was a bit of a, how do you say, it was a bit of a controversial thing having a presenter on television that wasn't, was a male but identified as a female and was presenting himself as a woman. And that was like a very big faux pas. Now the TV stations obviously protected me simply because, you know, all they cared about was the ratings, you know, and they liked me as a person. So every time that there was complaints, you know, they'd kind of just brush it off. But then it got to a point where it was really serious, because I had to get bomb checked every single day going into the TV station, because I had so many death threats from, you know, like different groups. I don't want to name names, but there was like different groups, you know, and it was really scary. That was probably the scariest time in my life. I'm thinking to myself, why would anyone want me dead? Like, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just, you know, presenting a very light talk show. But I think a lot of people from different religious, you know, groups were not keen or fond that one of the major television companies was airing someone like me, you know, and thinking that this was okay. So we had an emergency board meeting with the people that were representing me, my publicist, and then of course the head of the TV. And they told me, okay, we need to change this up. You need to change your image. And I'm thinking to myself, huh? What does that mean? Like, what, different makeup or a different hairstyle? Like, what are you saying? And they're like, yeah, we need you to cut your hair. We need you to become a guy again. And I was like, what?
Wow.
I was like, no, no, no. I was like, this isn't happening. You know, like, I am comfortable in how I present myself, and I'm not changing myself for anyone. And they were like, well, it's up to you. You either do it or we cut your contract. And of course, at that time, that was my sole income. I was supporting, you know, my orphanage, and I thought to myself, oh my God, what am I going to do? And, you know, I wanted to do something that was selfless. And I thought to myself, okay, if I got to change this image and change it to something that they want me to be, so be it. And looking back on it, it was such a sad time, because how sad is it that someone tells you that you've got to change, you know? Because I believe that you should always be who you are and who you want to be. So I kind of transitioned into being Samantha into just Sammy or Sam. And it took a while to get my head around, because coincidentally, as I started to, you know, go through hormone treatment to get beard and all the rest of it, I remembered going into the girls' toilet, completely forgetting that I'm no longer, you know, an image of a girl. And I just remember going into the toilet, you know, and like, oh gosh, I have to touch up my makeup, whatever it was. And this lady just looked in complete, you know, she was completely horrified, clutching onto her child and like kind of like moving away. And
Oh,
I just
yeah.
looked and I was like, oh, hi. And then she's like, you're a man. What are you doing in the girls' toilet? And I was like, and I looked at myself briefly at the mirror. I thought, oh my God, I'm so sorry. No, I'm normally like a girl, but like, oh, okay, this is so confusing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll go to the other toilet. And there was so many incidences where I had forgotten, and just in my mind it was already programmed that I was a girl, so I walked into the girls' toilet. So that was something that's pretty funny, like looking back on it, the transition. So I was still very effeminate, even being a guy. And 3 months down the line, I started to kind of feel a bit more comfortable in how I wanted to present myself, because like even though I was still a guy, I was able to wear makeup and still be, you know, eccentric.
Yeah.
So I didn't lose the eccentricity part. And then a very big bombshell just landed on my plate, because the TV stations were like, okay, the public aren't convinced that you're being a guy. You know, you really need to get all the people off your case, and you need to get married. And I was like, what? I was like, hold on a second. Asking me to cut my hair and, you know, change my clothes and do all of this, like, I'm transitioning into this, and like, okay, I get it, but I was like, I'm not marrying someone. I'm sorry, that is not happening, because, well, I mean, like, who were you intending me to get married to? They were like, okay, you have your own choice. You have a month to get married to someone of your own choice, or if not, we'll set you up with another, you know, celebrity or someone within the TV station, so that we can alleviate the fact that, you know, people think you're gay. And I was literally like, you've got to be kidding. So they had a problem with me being a female impersonator, or whatever it is that they labeled me as. Now they don't like it because they think that I'm gay. It's like, dude, a blind monkey would know I'm obviously, you know, gay or that. And they were like, okay, we'll take it or leave it. So then again, I was under this massive pressure. And at that point, I just thought, you know what? I'm not going to succumb to this. I'm not going to sell myself short just to please the public and what people perceive as what being normal is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, literally crying on my talent manager's shoulder, and like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I'm going to lose everything. You know, like, how am I going to afford this? And I contacted one of my friends, who ironically then became my wife. And I just wanted to catch up with her. I was having lunch and I was just crying, sipping on martinis. And I was like, my life is shit. It's ended. You know, like, what's going on? She's like, what is it that they want you to do? And I was like, I have to get married to someone in a month. If I don't get married to anyone, they're going to cut my contract, or at least set me up with someone else. And she's just like, oh, hun, if it's just a certificate and you need to get married to someone, she's like, I'll marry you if it's just a certificate. It's better to get married to someone you know than you don't. And I just looked at her and I was like, really? Okay, like, really, you do that for me? She's like, yeah, of course. And you know, we were kind of like a funny couple anyway. We were like Will and Grace. So, you know, like, she lived her life, and at the time she actually had a fiance, which is so hilarious. And me, just, you know, like Samantha, still in that transition from Samantha to being, you know, Samuel, or whatever, you know, I was being molded into at the time. And she just accepted me, and she was just like, okay, I'll get married. Now, we did not know that getting married, because I genuinely loved her as a friend, you know, but it wasn't love because I was in love with her that I wanted to get married. It was just a complete thing of convenience. It was like your best friend basically getting, you know, having your back. So we got married thinking that it was just going to be like something really small, very private, and holy shit, it was like, boom, it was front cover of OK magazine, it was Hello magazine, Hello Indonesia, you know, like, it just spiraled into this like humongous thing, thinking, oh my God, what is happening? Like, this is not how I intended it to be. And, you know, ironically, like, she did this without the consent. She didn't discuss this with her fiance, and later down the track, her fiance actually left her because of this. And she was like, I'm just helping my friend out, you know. And he was like super offended that, you know, she didn't discuss this with him. And she then didn't have a place to stay, so then she ended up moving in to where I lived, and the rest is history. And we actually developed love, and we actually really loved each other. And I know that a lot of people can't get their head around that. And even back then, her friends were just like, "What is wrong with you? Like, he's quite clearly gay, and he ain't into what you got, girl." You know.
Are you still together?
Yeah, no, we divorced in 2018.
Okay.
But we're very best friends, and like, you know, like we have, you know, our beautiful children, and I'm just so blessed for that. And it was an amicable divorce, to be honest, and a very amicable divorce. And now I'm kind of like living my best life now, because fast tracking from way back then, you know, 97 Indonesian movies later, one movie that we actually did with Nikon, with Jim Lonsbury, who's the director in Australia, that went to Cannes Film Festival. My autobiography, Samuel, Samantha, and Me, which we sold 22 million copies, which I can't even get my head around that 22 million people would want to read, you know, about little old me. And that was then translated into 2 different movies. One that was privately funded from 181 Pictures. We shot that movie in 3 different locations, and that was based on my book. And then another one, which is actually in the middle of being made into a Netflix series, which is like super crazy. And I'm not acting in it, thank God, because we released that movie. The movie was called Move On. It was 2015, and I was kind of disappointed with the movie because I didn't want to do it. I told them point blank, I was like, I'm not starring in a movie based on, you know, like excerpts of what happened in my autobiography, because I'm not Samantha anymore. I'm not as pretty as I was back then, and I don't even want to go down that road. But they just kept going on and on and on. And they actually sent a lady called Rita, who's one of the executive producers, to fly to Australia to have lunch with me, to convince me to come back to Indonesia, because at the time I was kind of like fluctuating between Australia to Indo. And she basically came into my office in Australia, in Brisbane, and she came with a contract. She's like, I need you to really sign this contract, because they told me I'm not allowed to go home unless you sign on this contract. And of course, I'm such a softie, and I didn't have my manager present, and I'm like, oh my God, this girl's not taking no for an answer. And she's like, please, you know, like, I could get fired, you know, I have children to feed. And
Wow.
you know, when someone puts you in a corner like that, it was just like, you've got to be kidding, girl. It's like, okay, here's a check then if you need money. But so I signed on the dotted line, and that was probably the biggest paycheck that I ever received for that movie out of all of the movies that I've done. Because on average, a lot of the movies in Indonesia, you know, like as an artist, you can earn anywhere from, you know, $50,000 to anywhere from 50,000 to like, you know, $2 million at best for like a really good picture. Now, I was clever in the fact that all of my deals, I always asked for royalty as opposed to like a salary. So I would just basically get royalty based on, you know, each of the performance of the movies or the sales and things like that. And that's really how you want to make your money in that industry. And I was just very, very blessed that I had a very good finance manager, Julie Buckley. I love you. If you're watching this, thank you so much. Because like, if it wasn't for Julie, I'd probably be, you know, dead in a ditch somewhere with a lot of credit card debt. And she was amazing. Like, Julie and I have worked together for 11 years, and she's managed my finances, and you know, she's basically looked after my portfolio for everything that I've ever done since then. And yeah, I created a very lucrative deal. You know, like, I have to profess, I'm not the best actor in the world. I'm certainly not the best presenter. I ain't got a 6-pack, so I'm not going to be winning GQ Man of the Year award, even though I'm front cover of GQ, which is hilarious. And I'll be honest, that's edited, super edited. I'm not as beautiful as that in real life. You know, I'm a human being. I eat and shit like everyone else. You know, I smell the roses like everyone else. And yes, my life might be a little different to what it was back then, but I'm still very much Sammy Sunshine, the same person that I was 2005, just a little bit more grown up.
I've got to say, thank you so much for coming on and being so open about your life. I mean, one thing I do, the last thing I want to say is just you touched upon, you know, when they asked you to transition back from Samantha to Sammy, and you know, you did that. Looking back, do you have, because you seem to me as someone that stood for what you believe. So to be told that, look, for the sake of a TV deal, you have to transition back um, to what you were. That must have been really difficult, because for so many years of your life, you battled with these feelings, and now it's in that control's in the hands of a TV company.
Exactly. And honestly, at the time, I felt like it was selling my soul, because it was like basically standing up for everything that I wanted to be. But I found a loophole around that, because I became that effeminate guy that was on television that wasn't visible on Indonesian TV. So in a way, I was super proud that I was able to kind of, you know, show that, hey, it's okay to be effeminate, and look, hey, I still have a family, and like, you know, if you guys have a problem with that, like, whatever. And I really wanted to kind of like spread awareness as well to Indonesia about LGBTQ. And even though it's a very fine subject, it's something that, you know, it's a very touchy thing, just because it is illegal to be gay in Indonesia, which is really sad to say, isn't it? You know, that there's still places in the world that it's illegal just to, you know, love someone of your own same sex. And I mean, like, it's taken me all of these years to be where I am now, and I have a very loving, beautiful partner who is just amazing. He is everything that I could ever ask for in a human being, and he's just loving, kind, caring, intelligent, and so the complete opposite of me. And yeah, so referring back to what you were saying, I need to recap. Sorry, I
I
don't
was
have a
going to say, do you
teleprompter.
regret that? Do you regret letting them control that decision, or are you happy and content now? Looking back, are you kind of at a stage where you're like, do you know what? I didn't like them telling me to do it, but I'm actually happy that I have.
In all honesty, if that hadn't had happened, I wouldn't have had my children. I wouldn't have, maybe my life wouldn't be where I am right now. So as difficult as it was back then, and of course there was a lot of sleepless nights and, you know, a lot of crying, I'm actually really grateful that happened, because I was able to really, truly, truly find out who I wanted to be. Because being honest, being Samantha, I was happy. You know, it was an experience for sure, but I wasn't entirely happy inside. You know, there was
Yeah.
a big part of me that was lonely, that still didn't really feel like I fitted in. And it's only now that I am where I am to this day that I'm just like, wow, that was all supposed to be the way that it is. And you know, the rest is history. So I don't regret anything. Um, I don't regret anything that I've done personally, but I think the one regret that I do have is that I didn't feel that I stood up for myself, you know, through a lot of different things that happened in my life. And I just wish that I had the courage that I have now. Because if I was to go back into Big Brother, if Big Brother asked me, hey, can you go back into Big Brother? I know for a fact that I would not be the same person that I was 2006. And if someone asked me, you know, or try to have an argument with me, I could actually stand up for myself, but in a very eloquent way that I'd be like, hey, bitch, you don't pay my bills. So it's like, girl, back to the drawing board. Just like, come to me if you got a check, okay?
Well, do you know, honestly, I mean, because when I said about getting you back on, you know, I said, come on for like a 10-minute chat about stuff, and we've covered so much, and it's so interesting. I think the people who watch us are going to love it, because you've been so open and honest with us about your journey, and there's a lot more to come. You're going to come over here in the UK, and we're probably going to see a lot more of you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, and honestly, like I when I did the initial interview with you, with all the other Big Brother colleagues of mine, I feel that sometimes it's hard to kind of like talk to so many individuals, you know, and have everyone say their little piece. And one of the questions is like, oh, what have you been up to? I really just focused it on family, because at the end of the day, I'm really happy. It's all about my family, and of course my career is like important to me as well. But if it wasn't for family and friends, like, you know, where would we be in this world? And I'm just really grateful for all the different opportunities that that have come my way over the years, and I'm very looking forward to moving to the UK. I'm a bit nervous about the weather because I've been so used to living in tropical.
It's bad.
Yeah, exactly. But for sure, we'll have to have a catch up, and I'll take you out for lunch or something. But I'm hopefully flying on Wednesday, by the way. Oh my God, cross my fingers.
Crossed.
Yeah.
Thank you
But
so
thank you
much.
very much. You're welcome. Can